We're absolutely delighted and privileged to have Rohit Talwar with us today. He's come all the way from London. Rohit is a futurist, he's an author, he's the CEO of a company called Fast Future, and he's an entrepreneur, so he puts his money where his mouth is. In this process, he's published a new book, A Very Human Future, which resonates with me a lot, because this is when I go out, also as a fellow futurist. This is a futurist interview almost. I talk about humanity way more than we talk about technology. Tell us about what inspired you to write this book, because you have done many books in the past, but now you are into the humanity piece.
Well, what we've been seeing over the last few years is a growing focus and expectation that tech was the answer to everything. That tech would solve all our problems, tech would liberate the whole of humanity, and it didn't matter if technology took away our jobs, because people could go off and be landscape gardeners or do the sculptures that they'd always intended to do. But the problem is most of humanity doesn't think that way, and a lot of people are very scared by the technology, and we've been seeing that increasingly from individual citizens through to politicians, a real fear that we're powerless in the face of the speed and scale of technology. So what we wanted to do was to create a very optimistic book that said, okay, you can't hold back the pace of innovation, but what you need to do is accelerate the pace of human development so that people can actually cope with what's going on.
One of the theses I have is that 20th century companies are collapsing because they were designed for the 20th century to manage risk, to maintain assets and think differently, while the 21st century companies are now coming up because they are coping with risk and change and shift. And this 10-year, 15-year sort of transition decade that I see, what are the sort of things that they should be looking at literally tomorrow morning?
So what you see is that, that transition period, we call it the messy middle,
okay,
where you can see the sunlit upland, but where you are today, you can't even find the shore to get across there. And the problem is that the new players coming through are very flat in their organisation. They recruit very bright people. They make sure everyone gets what they're doing. So when they move or when they pivot, the company goes with them quickly.
Right.
We have organisations where a lot of people have been asked to be robots. They're doing very robotic tasks. They're not asked to think. When we want their opinion, we'll give it to them. And we're not really taking our people with us. And we've had this nonsense messagery for the last 20 years about empowerment, and yet you don't see it change.
It's interesting you say that you don't need a business plan. Isn't the brain and aren't we as human beings goal-driven and objective-driven, or are we more relationship-driven?
We've led ourselves to believe that goals are everything. And I think goals are great, and I understand why in a big organisation turning over 5 billion dirham you have to have some structures for allocating resources. We don't. We're tiny compared to that. So ours is much more about relational driven. What does your heart see? What is your passion right now? How might we create a book around your passion? Who might we engage in contributing?
Yeah.
And then how do we get it to market in a way that reflects that passion? So with this book, we could have booked big auditoriums in loads of places and done all that, but I much prefer to go in and do intimate sessions around the world, where we're reaching people who are actually passionate about how do we put people first.